Gratitude is a debt that most people would rather bury than pay. Claire Dawson believed that a $700 million contract was her ticket to a new world. A world where she was a star and everyone else, including her husband, was just a shadow. The ink was barely dry on the deal when she walked into their bedroom with her secret lover. Sam stood in the doorway. Claire didn't flinch. She told him to pack his bags. She called him uneducated. She called him a deadbeat. She called him simple. She called him a relic of a past she had outgrown. She demanded a clean break. She forced him to sign a waiver saying she wanted nothing to do with his property, assuming he had nothing to give. But what Claire's pride made her forget was the internal cost of her success. 2 years ago, she was dying. 2 years ago, it was Sam who went under the knife to give her his kidney so she could live to see this day. She thought she was discarding a low-status husband. What she didn't know was that the man she called deadbeat and useless was the silent architect of the very world she was trying to inhabit. By signing that waiver, she wasn't protecting her millions. She was legally severing herself from the only power that made her relevant. She didn't just sign a divorce. She signed away her own future. So sit back and subscribe to Sovereign Truth. Let us begin. Claire Dawson signed her name with the confidence of a woman who believed she had built herself. The boardroom was premier, mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district, 18 executives watching her hold the pen like a scepter. She signed the final page of the contract. The room erupted in applause. She smiled like someone who had just escaped gravity. This contract represents the culmination of vision, sacrifice, and refusal to accept limitations, Claire said, standing to address the room. I built this company from nothing, and today, the world recognizes that. The applause grew louder. She said nothing. She meant it. In her mind, the past 2 years, the surgery, the recovery, the man who gave her the organ that allowed her to stand in that room, had already been deleted from the story she was telling herself. Because in Claire's narrative, gratitude was a weight, and successful people didn't carry weight. They cut it loose. The celebration dinner was held at Aurelius, a private dining room reserved for people who didn't need to ask the price. Claire arrived at 7. Her executive team was already there. 8 people seated around a table designed for 10. Marcus Vail sat to her right. He was her strategic advisor. That's what the company directory said. What the company directory didn't say was that Marcus had been sharing Claire's bed for the past 4 months. Sam arrived at 7:20. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark jeans. No tie, no designer label. Just clean, unremarkable, forgettable. Claire looked up when he entered. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She pointed. Sam, you're late. We already ordered. There's a seat over there. She pointed to a corner table, 15 feet from the main group, away from the conversation, away from the celebration, away from her. Sam nodded. He walked to the corner table. He sat down. He didn't complain. He didn't ask to be included. He simply watched. Sam wasn't there to celebrate. He was there to observe. He had learned, over the years of their marriage, that people reveal who they truly are when they think no one important is watching. And Claire had just made it very clear. She didn't think Sam was important. 20 minutes into the dinner, Claire stood. She raised her glass. The table went quiet. I want to make a toast, she said, to the people who believed in this vision when no one else did. To Marcus, who saw the potential before the world caught up. To this team, who refused to let doubt slow us down. To everyone who bet on excellence. She raised her glass to every person in that room, except one. Sam sat 15 feet away, and she looked through him like he was furniture. Marcus leaned over. He whispered something to Claire. She laughed, loud enough for Sam to hear, loud enough for the table to hear. Then Marcus stood. He walked to the corner table. He placed a folded napkin in front of Sam. On it, written in pen, "The help entrance is in the back." Sam looked at the napkin. He looked at Marcus. He didn't say a word. He folded it carefully. He placed it in his jacket pocket. Then he stood, walked out of the restaurant, and drove home alone. What Claire didn't know, what Marcus didn't know, was that the reservation for that private dining room had been paid for by the Mercer Foundation, the same foundation that held the master lease on Claire's office building, the same foundation that had co-signed the insurance bonds that made her $700 million contract possible. Sam didn't just give Claire his kidney. He gave her the invisible architecture that allowed her to believe she was a self-made titan, and she had just publicly declared him irrelevant. That night, Claire came home to an empty house. Sam had packed one bag. He left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "I hope the success you've built brings you everything you think you deserve." Claire read it once. She crumpled it. She threw it in the trash. Then she called Marcus. "He's gone," she said. "Good," Marcus replied. "Now you can finally move forward." Claire smiled. She poured herself a glass of wine. She stood in the kitchen of a house she thought she owned, celebrating the removal of a man she thought was nothing. She didn't know that the deed to that house was held in a trust Sam had established 6 years prior, a trust where he was the sole trustee. She didn't know that every luxury she touched, every asset she claimed, every foundation she stood on had Sam's signature buried in the legal architecture. She thought she was free. She was about to learn the difference between freedom and foreclosure. 2 weeks later, Claire filed for divorce. She didn't hesitate. She didn't grieve. She called it a strategic realignment. Her lawyer called it the cleanest dissolution he'd ever seen. Sam didn't contest. He didn't ask for alimony. He didn't fight for the house. He simply asked for one thing: a full accounting of all marital assets. Claire sat in her new executive office when her lawyer called with the request. Marcus was there, reviewing quarterly projections. "He wants an accounting?" Claire said, leaning back in her chair. "Fine. Let him see the numbers. Let him see exactly how little he contributed to any of this. Maybe it'll finally teach him some humility." She said this while sitting in an office whose lease was guaranteed by a trust Sam had established 6 years prior. She said this while wearing a medical device that monitored the kidney Sam had given her 30 months ago. She said this while breathing air that was only possible because Sam had chosen to give her his organ when the transplant list offered no hope. But Claire didn't think about any of that, because in her mind, the past was a story she had already rewritten, and in her version, Sam was a footnote she had edited out. 3 days later, Claire's lawyer called Sam's attorney. "My client wants a clean break," he said. "No shared assets, no future claims, no entanglements. She's willing to waive all claims to anything Mr. Mercer owns, and she expects the same in return. Frankly, it's generous. Your client has no documented income, no property in his name, and no corporate stake in anything my client has built." Sam's attorney paused. Then he said, "Mr. Mercer will sign the waiver. He wants Ms. Dawson to have exactly what she's asking for: complete independence from anything he's built." Claire's lawyer sent the waiver over that afternoon. It was 4 pages long: standard divorce language, asset separation, clean break clauses. The critical language was buried in Section 2.3. Claire Dawson hereby waives all claims, present and future, to any and all assets, trusts, corporate vehicles, or subsidiary holdings associated with Samuel J. Mercer. Sam read it twice, then he signed it. Not because he had nothing to lose, but because Claire had just legally severed herself from everything she thought she owned. The waiver wasn't protection. It was a suicide note, and Claire had just asked him to notarize it. 1 month after filing for divorce, Claire gave the keynote speech at the Capital Alliance Network's annual gala. 300 people attended: industry leaders, venture capitalists, CEOs who controlled billions. Claire stood on stage in a black gown that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She spoke for 12 minutes. The applause was thunderous. "Success requires sacrifice," Claire said, her voice steady and strong. "It requires the courage to leave behind anyone who can't match your velocity. I learned that the hard way. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding you back. And when you find the strength to let go, That's when you finally become who you were meant to be. The audience stood. They clapped. They believed her. She said this at a gala hosted by the Capital Alliance Network, the same network that Sam had founded 7 years ago under a corporate veil, the same network whose membership committee Sam still quietly chaired. 300 people applauded her speech. 12 of them knew exactly who her ex-husband was. They said nothing. They simply watched. Sam stood at the back of the room. He wore a dark suit. No name tag, no table assignment. He wasn't there as a guest. He was there as an observer. Richard Kensington approached him at the bar after Claire's speech ended. Richard was in his 60s, silver hair, a posture that suggested he'd spent a lifetime being obeyed. "Mr. Mercer," Richard said quietly, "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." Sam took a sip of his drink. "I'm just observing, Richard. She doesn't know, does she?" "No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way until the audit is complete." Richard nodded. "You're a patient man. More patient than I'd be." Sam didn't respond. He simply watched Claire move through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, basking in applause that existed because of an infrastructure she couldn't see. Richard Kensington was the former CEO of Kensington Global. He was one of the founding trustees of the Mercer Foundation. He had watched Sam build an empire in the shadows while Claire took credit in the light. He had also watched Sam donate his kidney without hesitation. And now, he was watching Sam do something most men would never have the discipline to do: let the trap close on its own. 2 weeks later, Claire was interviewed at a charity fundraiser for organ donation awareness. Local news, a 4-minute segment. The reporter was young, enthusiastic, eager to tell an inspiring story. "Ms. Dawson, you've been a vocal advocate for organ donation since your transplant 2 years ago. Can you tell us about your journey?" Claire smiled. Warm, gracious. The picture of gratitude. "It was the hardest period of my life," she said. "I was on the transplant list for 8 months. I had nearly given up hope, but I was fortunate. An anonymous donor gave me a second chance. I don't know who they were, but I think about them every day. That gift taught me that strangers can show more compassion than the people who claim to love you." Anonymous. She called him Anonymous. The man she had been married to for 6 years, the man who had taken a leave from his work, undergone surgery, and spent 4 weeks in recovery so she could live to see this day. She had rewritten the story so completely that she had erased him from the most important moment of her life. Sam watched the interview from his car. He was parked outside the venue. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He simply added one more line to the audit he'd been keeping. Then he called his attorney. "Proceed," he said. "Are you sure?" his attorney asked. "I'm sure." Over the next 6 weeks, Sam compiled everything. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of necessity. Because when you're about to dismantle someone's entire understanding of reality, you need to make sure every fact is irrefutable. The master lease agreement showing Claire's office building was owned by Mercer Holdings, LLC. The insurance bond co-signed by the Mercer Foundation that guaranteed her $700 million contract. The marital home deed showing the property was held in trust, with Sam as sole trustee. The medical records documenting Sam as the kidney donor. Not anonymous. Named, verified, registered. The operating agreement for Dawson Enterprises showing it was a subsidiary of a parent trust Sam controlled. Claire thought she had built an empire. Sam had the receipts showing she had built a treehouse in his yard. And now the audit was complete. The divorce would be final in 72 hours. The waiver had been executed. Claire's legal team had sent Sam's lawyer a final notice. All property disputes were closed. There would be no appeals. Sam sat in his study. It was late. The house was quiet. He picked up his phone. He typed 11 words. Then he stared at them for 5 minutes before pressing send. "Claire, before this becomes permanent, I need you to know something. The foundation that co-signed your contract, it's mine. The building where your office sits, it's mine. The trust that holds the house, it's mine. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you still have 24 hours to acknowledge what I gave you and walk away with your dignity intact. Just tell them I was your partner. That's all I'm asking. Sam. He sent it. He waited. 30 seconds later, his phone buzzed. Claire's response came fast, confident, dismissive. Sam, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's pathetic. You're not on any documents I've ever seen. You're not on any board. You're not a signatory to anything that matters. You gave me a kidney because you felt guilty about being a failure. That doesn't make you a partner. That makes you a donor. Stop embarrassing yourself. We're done. Don't contact me again. Sam read the message 3 times. Then he forwarded it to his attorney with a single line. Proceed as planned. He didn't respond to Claire. There was nothing left to say. She had been given mercy. She had chosen pride. What happened next wasn't revenge. It was consequence. Claire showed Marcus the text message that same night. They were at her house, the house she thought she owned, the house with Sam's name on the trust deed. Marcus read the message. He laughed. He's bluffing, Marcus said, handing the phone back. Men like him always do this when they realize they've lost. He probably Googled some legal terms and thinks he can scare you. Claire, you've seen the documents. You've signed the contracts. Your name is on everything. He's nobody. Claire nodded. You're right. I almost felt sorry for him for a second. But this is desperation, and it's exactly why I had to leave him behind. She didn't call Sam back. She didn't ask a lawyer to verify his claims. She didn't even consider the possibility that the man she had shared a bed with for 6 years might be telling her the truth. Because in Claire's mind, Sam was incapable of being important. And that belief, that absolute certainty, was about to cost her everything. Claire walked into the boardroom at 9 o'clock sharp. She wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was perfect. Her posture was confident. She carried a leather portfolio containing her Q4 performance breakdown. Marcus was already seated to her right. The 8 board members were present. But there were 2 people she didn't recognize. A man in his 60s with silver hair and a posture that suggested he'd spent a lifetime being obeyed. And a woman in her 40s carrying a leather portfolio stamped with a logo Claire didn't know. Claire set her materials down at the head of the table. She smiled. Good morning, everyone. I know we're here to review Q4 performance, and I'm pleased to report we've exceeded projections by 18%. I've prepared a full breakdown. The silver-haired man raised his hand. Not aggressive, just firm. Ms. Dawson, please sit down. We're not here to review your performance. We're here to discuss a structural irregularity that's come to our attention. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of people waiting their turn to speak. The vacuum silence of people who had just realized they were witnessing an execution. Claire remained standing. I'm sorry, who are you? The silver-haired man stood. He buttoned his jacket. My name is Richard Kensington. I'm the acting chairman of the Capital Alliance Network and senior trustee of the Mercer Foundation. This is Elizabeth Harrow, chief legal officer for Mercer Holdings. We're here because of the waiver you signed 5 weeks ago. Claire's face didn't change, but her hand gripped the edge of the table. The waiver was part of my divorce settlement. That has nothing to do with this company. Elizabeth opened her portfolio. She removed 3 documents. She placed them in front of Claire with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. Actually, Ms. Dawson, it has everything to do with this company. Elizabeth's voice was cold, clinical, legal. Ms. Dawson, on September 14th, you signed a legal waiver stating, and I quote, Claire Dawson hereby waives all claims, present and future, to any and all assets, trusts, corporate vehicles, or subsidiary holdings associated with Samuel J. Mercer. Is that correct? Claire nodded. Yes, it was part of the divorce settlement. Sam had no assets, so it was a formality. I see. Elizabeth said. And did you review the master operating agreement for Dawson Enterprises before signing that waiver? Claire's jaw tightened. I don't understand what you're asking. Dawson Enterprises is my company. I founded it. Elizabeth slid the first document across the table. You founded it using a $2.3 million startup loan from the Mercer Foundation. The loan agreement, which you signed in 2019, included a conversion clause. If the company reached a valuation of $50 million or more, the loan would convert into a 60% equity stake held by the foundation. Your company is currently valued at $187 million. You are not the owner, Ms. Dawson. You are the CEO of a subsidiary. Claire stared at the document. Her breathing changed. Shallow, fast. That's impossible. I would have known. My lawyers would have told me. Richard leaned forward. Your lawyers reviewed the documents you gave them. You never gave them the master trust agreement because you never knew it existed. You assumed Samuel Mercer was a man with nothing to his name. That assumption is why we're here today. Claire reached for the document. Her hand was shaking. The pen she'd been holding slipped from her fingers. It hit the glass table. Sharp, bright, final. Everyone flinched. Claire looked at Marcus. Marcus was staring at the documents like they were written in a language he didn't understand. This can't be real, Claire whispered. Elizabeth slid the second document forward. This is the insurance bond that guaranteed your $700 million infrastructure contract. It was co-signed by the Mercer Foundation. Without that co-signature, the contract would never have been approved. The issuing authority required a guarantor with a minimum net asset threshold of $500 million. You didn't meet that threshold, Ms. Dawson. The foundation did. Claire's voice cracked. Why wasn't I told? You were, Richard said quietly. It's in the rider agreement you signed when the contract was finalized. Page 47, section 12.6. You signed it without reading it. Richard stood. He walked to the door. He opened it. And Samuel Mercer walked into the room. Sam didn't look at Claire. He looked at the board. He nodded once. Then he took the seat at the head of the table. The seat Claire had been sitting in for 4 years. No one objected. No one moved. Because everyone in that room except Claire and Marcus had known exactly who Sam was the entire time. Richard's voice was formal, ceremonial. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to reintroduce Samuel J. Mercer, founder and sole trustee of the Mercer Foundation, majority equity holder in Dawson Enterprises, and the primary guarantor of the $700 million infrastructure contract currently under Ms. Dawson's management. Claire tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. She gripped the table for support. She opened her mouth to speak. No sound came out. She looked at Marcus. Marcus was staring at Sam like he'd just seen a ghost. Because Marcus had spent 6 months mocking a man he thought was nobody, and that nobody was now sitting at the head of the table, holding every piece of paper that mattered. Sam's voice was calm, steady, final. Claire, Sam looked at her for the first time since entering the room. 2 years ago, I gave you my kidney so you could live long enough to build something meaningful. You used that life to erase me from your story. You called the gift anonymous. You called me irrelevant. You forced me to sign a document that you thought would protect you from a man who had nothing. He paused, but you didn't protect yourself. You severed yourself from the only infrastructure that made you viable. I didn't take your company, Claire. You gave it to me. I didn't destroy your reputation. You signed away your own authority. What happens next isn't revenge. It's a correction. Sam didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a document being stamped. Claire's face was pale. Her hands were trembling. She looked around the room for support. No one met her eyes. Elizabeth opened the third document. She read from it in the same clinical tone. Effective immediately, the Capital Alliance Network is exercising its majority equity rights under Section 7.2 of the operating agreement. Claire Dawson, is hereby removed from her position as CEO of Dawson Enterprises due to gross negligence in fiduciary oversight. Ms. Dawson failed to disclose the corporate structure of her own company, failed to recognize her guarantor relationships, and demonstrated a fundamental incompetence in understanding the legal instruments she signed. This termination is effective as of 9:47 a.m. today. Claire's title didn't phase out, it vaporized. The digital directory in the lobby was updated in real time. Her name was removed from the company website before she left the building. Her keycard was deactivated before she reached the elevator. Richard stood. Ms. Dawson, you have 20 minutes to collect personal items from your office. Anything bearing company property marks, electronics, files, or documents will remain in the building. Your company vehicle will be returned to the fleet. Your corporate credit accounts are frozen as of this meeting. Claire finally found her voice. You can't do this. Sam spoke again. We already have. Within 6 hours, the forensic dismantling was complete. The contract. The $700 million infrastructure deal was not awarded to Claire personally. It was awarded to Dawson Enterprises as a subsidiary of Mercer Holdings. With Claire's removal and her signed waiver disavowing any connection to Sam's holdings, she had no legal claim to the project. The contract was reassigned to a new executive team within 48 hours. The office building. The lease Claire thought she held was a sublease from Mercer Holdings. With her termination, the sublease was void. She was escorted from the building by security. She was told that returning without authorization would constitute trespassing. The matrimonial home. The estate Claire had lived in for 5 years was held in a family trust established by Sam before the marriage. The divorce decree granted her no claim to trust assets. She was given 14 days to vacate. After 14 days, the locks were changed. The vehicles, the Range Rover, the Tesla, the weekend convertible, all were registered under corporate fleet management tied to Mercer Holdings. They were repossessed within 72 hours. The bank accounts. Claire's personal accounts held $340,000. Substantial but not empire-building. The accounts she thought were hers, the investment accounts, the money market funds, the offshore holdings, were all project-linked to Dawson Enterprises. With her removal, those accounts were frozen and reallocated, but the material loss was only the first layer of the ruin. The Capital Alliance Network issued what's known in corporate governance as a Status 4 advisory. It's not a public announcement. It's a quiet memo sent to every major board, every venture capital firm, every bank that funds high-level deals. The language is polite. The effect is absolute. The Capital Alliance Network advises that Claire Dawson, former CEO of Dawson Enterprises, demonstrated a failure of fiduciary competence by neglecting to verify the corporate structure of her own organization. Further, Ms. Dawson signed legal waivers without conducting due diligence on the entities and trusts involved, resulting in operational disruption and loss of stakeholder confidence. The network does not recommend Ms. Dawson for board positions, executive roles, or fiduciary responsibilities pending a full governance review. In corporate language, that memo is a death certificate. Claire wasn't just fired. She was marked as incompetent. No board would seat her. No investor would back her. No bank would lend to her. She wasn't a fallen executive. She was a cautionary tale. Marcus Vail didn't fare much better. As the newly appointed CFO, who had also failed to identify the company's ownership structure, he was terminated alongside Claire. But Marcus had a second problem. He had been using his position to siphon consulting fees into a private LLC he controlled. The forensic audit Sam's team conducted didn't just find incompetence. It found fraud. Marcus wasn't just fired. He was referred to federal prosecutors. Within 6 months, he would be indicted on 8 counts of wire fraud and embezzlement. 3 days after the termination, Claire called Marcus. Marcus, I need you to call Richard. I need you to explain that we didn't know. We can fix this. Marcus's voice was cold, distant. Claire, I can't fix anything. I can't even pay my own legal fees. I'm done. And if you're smart, you'll stop calling me before they start looking at you for conspiracy." He hung up. He never answered her calls again. The man she had celebrated with, the man she had chosen over Sam, vanished the moment the money stopped. 6 months later, Claire Dawson lived in a one-bedroom apartment in a part of the city she used to drive through without stopping. The walls were thin. The neighbors were loud. The elevator smelled like cleaning solution and regret. She had $89,000 left in her personal account. Enough to survive, not enough to matter. She didn't work. No one would hire her. She didn't go out. Every time she tried, she saw her own face on business journals with headlines like, "The CEO who didn't know who owned her company," and "Pride, Incompetence, and the Fall of Claire Dawson." Every morning, she felt the scar on her side, the place where Sam's kidney kept her alive. She had called him irrelevant. She had called the transplant anonymous. But her body remembered. Every pulse, every ache, every moment of being alive was a reminder. The man she tried to erase had given her life twice, and she had used that life to destroy herself. Sam didn't gloat. He didn't give interviews. He didn't release statements. He restructured Dawson Enterprises under a new leadership team. He expanded the Mercer Foundation's work in organ donation advocacy, this time with his name attached. He attended galas. He funded hospitals. He lived quietly, but visibly. And every time Claire saw a headline about his work, every time she saw a photo of him shaking hands with a governor or a CEO, she heard the same echo, the sound of her own voice demanding he sign the waiver, the sound of her own pride burying her future. Claire never spoke to Sam again. But 6 months after her termination, she received a letter. It was handwritten. It was 1 page. It said, "Claire, I didn't write this to hurt you. I wrote it because I think you deserve to understand what happened. You didn't lose everything because I took it from you. You lost everything because you never understood where it came from. You thought success was something you built alone. But no one builds anything alone. Every structure needs a foundation. You just never looked down to see what you were standing on. I gave you my kidney because I loved you. I gave you my infrastructure because I believed in what you were trying to build. I didn't need credit. I didn't need recognition. I just needed you to see me as a partner. But you didn't. You saw me as an obstacle. And when you tried to remove the obstacle, you removed the foundation. I hope someday you understand the difference between being self-made and being self-aware. The life I gave you is still yours. What you do with it now is up to you. Sam." Claire read the letter 17 times. Then she folded it. She placed it in a drawer. And she never opened that drawer again. Because the truth in that letter was the one thing she couldn't afford to face. She hadn't been betrayed. She had been seen. And what she had been seen as was someone who mistook charity for power and gratitude for weakness. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Was Sam wrong? He gave Claire his kidney. He gave her his financial infrastructure. He gave her every chance to succeed. And when she repaid him with betrayal and erasure, he gave her one final gift, the legal mechanism to destroy herself. He didn't fire her. She signed herself out. He didn't take her assets. She waived her rights to them. He didn't ruin her reputation. She proved her incompetence in front of a board. Some people will say Sam should have told her the truth from the beginning, that he should have made his role visible. But here's the counter question. If Claire had known Sam was powerful, would she have stayed? Or would she have just been more careful about how she discarded him? Was Sam's silence a manipulation? Or was it the only way to see who Claire truly was when she thought no one important was watching? Gratitude is not a transaction. It's a mirror. And Claire spent 2 years staring into that mirror, seeing only herself. By the time she looked down, the ground beneath her was already gone. If you believe Sam was justified, comment foundation. If you think he went too far, comment mercy. And if you think Claire got exactly what she signed for, comment waiver. Let me know what you think. This is Sovereign Truth. Subscribe if you haven't already.